everyone, and welcome back to the Unrestricted Podcast. I'm Matty Stunts, and I'm joined here this episode with Drew Camden, aka Drib.
Hey guys.
And Tommy. Oh my God, starts with a T.
What's going on?
And also we have Drew. Would you like to maybe introduce Matt here?
Yeah. So we're joined today by Mr. Matt Mishak.
Hi, my name is Matt Mishak. I specialize in drone law. You can look at my website at mishaklaw.com, mishaklaw.com.
And Matt is the lawyer that got involved with us after. God, I'm so used to dancing around the issue, but I guess now I'm able to just talk about it. So we were under investigation with Transport Canada for a drone operation that we did, and actually we have all three of the pilots. Myself, Tommy, and
Let's call it Bridgegate. I like it.
Bridgegate. So we did a little bit of an operation around a bridge in Canada, and we were under investigation for that. And Matt is the person that helped us with that. So thank you for the work that you did on that, Matt, and thank you for joining us today to kind of talk about everything that we can talk about now.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So just to be clear, I was not piloting on that venture because I'm still Canadian and I haven't been investigated yet. So that is, I was only there and witnessed to the perfectly legal actions after. Hey, Drew, do you have the letter? Can we maybe pull up that letter and see and read through it?
Sure, we can definitely flash the letter up in the edit as well. But
I think we can start this whole thing off by saying everything's good now. We're in the clear. I don't know.
How would you say how would you describe the situation, Matt?
We received an email from the Civil Aviation Enforcement in Canada, and they are closing their investigation. So once they do that, this would be the time to tell us if there's any type of civil fines forthcoming that hasn't been done. They're closing the investigation. If you compared it to a criminal investigation, which is not, it's a civil investigation, it'd be lack of probable cause. We're not going to investigate further. We're not going to issue any fines. We are closing this. And my suspicion is because it's lack of substantial evidence supporting what they were investigating some of you guys for violation of 60241, which no person shall operate an unmanned air vehicle in flight except in accordance with a special flight operation certificate or an air operator certificate.
Which is an SFOC, which I think you guys have the same kind of certificate in. So SFOC is a special flight operations certificate. Do you guys have something like that when you work commercially in the States?
Yeah, so specifically for commercial operations, the Part 107, right, Matt?
That's right. And then recreational and hobbyist use has been separate. And as far as there's been a change in the regs, it's not fully implemented yet with regard to recreational hobbyist use. But I believe that you were actually absolutely correct that the 107 is the corresponding reg for the United States.
Mm-hmm. So let's back up just a quick second. So I think we assume that most people following this podcast and following all of our media channels are probably familiar with this, but it was actually over a year ago. It's hard to I keep kind of forgetting that this happened well over a year ago at this point. So what happened? Like I said, we were flying, and we did an operation near a bridge, and it was in my opinion, and in Matt's opinion, I would hope, a recreational operation that we, as always, we're just always rolling cameras. We turned it into a video that we posted to the Rotor Riot Company YouTube page. It was not monetized, and I'll say it was actually kind of circumstantial because we used a copywritten song, so it was not monetized. But the video got a lot of attention. It was actually featured on several Canadian news outlets, like on TV, and mostly all with negative spin, mostly everyone saying that this was illegal and or unsafe. And I think there's a difference there, and I want to talk about that later. But at the end of the day, this resulted in Transport Canada taking a look at the evidence, which is the videos that we posted, getting in contact with us, and then later in communication with Matt, and determining for what they would actually charge us with. And Matt, the only real thing that they wanted to bring up against us was a violation of 602.41, which, as you say, would be doing a commercial operation without that certificate. Is that fair?
Right. And I don't think that there was clear evidence that it was a commercial operation, and that's probably where their investigation ran dry.
Okay, so how would you define a commercial operation?
Well, here's the thing about, by the way, it was, I guess we could talk about safety later, but definitely some talented, you guys are some talented pilots. I'm a lawyer, but I've been involved with drones since way back in 2010, 2011. So I do respect the talent it takes to do that. I guess we could talk about the safety later. Here's the thing about FPV flying as it sits right now. So if I'm inspecting a facade in a building and being compensated for that, clearly commercial use, right?
Right, because you knew going into the operation that you were being paid for the flight. I'm being paid to put this machine up in the air to inspect something, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. Financial compensation would definitely be one of those determining factors for, hey, this is commercial use.
Okay.
So now, do you think that they were more worried about us paying the proper taxes than they were safety? Because it seems like we're allowed to do it if we're not getting paid.
Well, yeah. Well, it seemed like what got me was all the news and reactions were all concerning the proximity to the structures and to vehicles that were on the bridge, but that's not eventually what Transport Canada was investigating us for.
Right. They were investigating to see if you were actually making money in Canada while operating a drone.
Yeah.
So everything is fine to their standards unless you're getting paid.
Well, I don't necessarily want to go on record saying that, making a recommendation that someone may or may not take as kind of justification for what they might do. I think as we'll get to, this whole experience has been really enlightening as to what kind of operations we do and how we present them. But I think, at the end of the day, it was about a commercial charge, and it comes down to defining what a commercial operation is. So the first case that Matt described is very clear. You're putting a machine up for direct compensation. Are there other types of scenarios where it may be less clear but could still be considered a commercial operation?
Well, I would say this, that here's the interesting thing about FPV, right? There's competitions. Aero modeling in the United States, for example, has always been that type of competition, a gathering to fly together at an RC field, right? The whole essence of aero modeling, which FPV racing is a part of, has always been for fun, enjoyment, recreation, right? Has it had a commercial aspect to it? Yeah. If you go to any RC event in the United States, and I'm sure that in Canada, you'll find that you have various brands that will advertise there. There's sometimes prizes in FPV racing for winning the race, right? So there's some questions as far as, is this truly for recreation? And it's kind of one of these ambiguous situations, I think. As far as the Air Canada situation, analyzing what was going on, you guys were flying for recreational purposes. It was being recorded by a profit-making institution in that it was Rotor Riot. But Rotor Riot, I don't know, is a commercial institution. I don't know if they could ever link that to the actual flying of the drones. I mean, for example, if I have a commercial company and I come out and I just you guys flying, having fun, and I film it, and I make money on it, well, I mean, I'm engaged in a commercial enterprise, but you guys are just out there flying and having fun, and I think that's where the ambiguity lies.
Right. I think there's all sorts of these weird ways that you could spin it. In a sense, could you charge? So like I said, we used a copywritten song on the YouTube video. What that meant in that case, depending on which song you use, YouTube handles it different ways. For the specific song we used, they said, we're going to run ads. It's a monetized video, but it's not monetized for you. All profits go to the record label and say, whatever, we like the song. This is really just for fun. So for those views, for the ads that ran on the views while the video was live, it's since been removed per Transport Canada request. Though that ad revenue went to the record label. Are they in violation of commercial operations in a sense, right? Should you look at it that way, or what? And furthermore, what aspects of the video are what's the meat of the video in a sense? Is it the on-screen quote unquote performance of the characters, myself, Maddie, Tommy? Is it the editing? Where do you define what the value was when it's kind of all mixed in like that? It doesn't seem crystal clear to me.
Well, I think you're focusing on the pilot, right? That's what aviation authority has always been about. What's the pilot doing? We have a body of case law in the United States regarding, am I flying for recreation or am I flying for commercial? I'll give you an example. There's a case that out of the United States where you had pilots that were recreational pilots. They just had private pilot's license, and they were giving hunters a ride to a hunting site, right? That a commercial endeavor? Pilots said, we're not being compensated for giving these guys a ride. They're paying us to as guides for hunting. We're just sort of giving them a ride as part of the overall package. So there's big debate about that. Now, I guess I'd have to ask the pilot in any given situation. This isn't directly addressed to you guys, but what's the pilot doing? The example always comes up that you're selling some photos that you took with a drone, right? You're selling them for commercial gain. But the question is not really whether you're gaining from the flight itself. It's what was your state of mind when you made the flight? Did you intend on taking these pictures and then selling them? Or was it, hey, I had my drone up in the air. I caught something I didn't know I was going to catch on my video. Now the local news is interested about it, and now they're paying me to purchase that video. I think you can have scenarios where you actually do profit from something you do with regard to drones, but it wasn't a commercial flight because it wasn't envisioned that way at the time of the flight.
So I think that is a good time to force Tommy to weigh in here, because Tommy, I know you have limited time as is, and I haven't really given you a chance to get a word in, but I would say you were, in the episode in question, the pilot that was most featured for flying.
Yeah, all right. So Matt brings up a very interesting point that is kind of like what was the state of mind, and I'm really glad that we're having this podcast because we can finally talk about it. And then it was kind of getting to that point where I'm almost starting to forget the details. But one of the things about Rotor Riot, which is very true about this video that we put out, is that we sought out to, and it is our goal to really document the FPV mini quad culture, both the highs, the lows, the adventures, the experiences, the camaraderie, the friendship, the technical building, everything about this culture. And with that particular video, it literally was the three of us, after shooting some very instructional stuff with Maddie, how to do Maddie flips, it was really, okay, we're done. Let's just go have some fun now and fly for fun. And, with Kapper and with the Rotor Riot team, the camera really never stops. And when you get to that point, it's not really so much we're going to go out and fly and make a video out of this. It's just we're going to fly. And if there's something cool and worth sharing about this, we'll do that. And so we did that flight, or I should say I did that flight. You guys were hopping along for the ride, checking it out. And it turned out to be something very exciting. I was super stoked about the flight. I think you guys were kind of like freaking out, like, "Oh my God, this is amazing, this is cool." And it was that.
Everyone thinks you're very talented, Tommy.
Okay, I just realized how I came off.
No, but I'm serious. You were doing some pretty cool stuff.
And it wasn't about to try and do some cool stuff. The point of the video is just to show how much fun and excitement can be had with the hobby and what that culture is. And so we made that video. And, you bring up the point that we use a video or a music selection that can't be monetized. But we came into it already saying, like, this is not to make money, guys. We're picking this song because this has the right feel. This is not about trying to make money, add revenue on this. This is just about sharing something in the best light possible. And, for the FPV community, I think for most of the community, it was a very positive and cool thing. But I can also see how for news outlets, they would probably want to take it off into more of a negative thing.
Well, the response was really interesting because initially a lot of the core members of the FPV community, pilots that have a lot of experience flying themselves, experience with what we've done in the past, there was initially a very positive reaction to the video. "Oh yeah, this was awesome, really cool. Tommy's a badass. All this is great." And for probably the first 30 hours, that was the reaction. And then it flipped really quickly. It even started to flip before the news stories started breaking on television. I started seeing people that were kind of less familiar with these types of operations start to get upset, questioning whether or not it was a safe operation or whether or not it was a legal operation. And there was a dramatic flip, and after a few more days following that initial reaction, the like to dislike ratio had gone the complete other way, and I think we were sitting at about 70% dislikes. It was up there. It was crazy. I'd never seen that sort of reaction. Is it the most
disliked Rotor Riot video?
No, I don't think so, actually. Actually, because it did get traffic. Yeah, we've had some others. FPV Breakfast and this Pinata episode that I did. Everyone hated the Pinata episode. We don't talk about those. So FPV Breakfast, Pinatas, and Bridge Dives.
I remember you telling me about the Pinata episode when you were here in Vancouver.
Oh my God, because it had actually just happened, I think. Oh no,
I think so.
It was recent, yeah.
Well, okay, so if we just reel this back in really quick, and you kind of think about those stats that you break out. You said there was a very positive, and what I say to that, or what I like to think, is that the initial people watching it are folks that are familiar with FPV, are familiar with our videos and what we do. And at some point, because of how on the edge that video was, it started to get shared to people that I would say are probably right outside our core community, and they may or may not be as familiar with what these machines are capable of or how we operate and things like that. And so I think that's where you start to see kind of that tipping scale. And, it might just be that it's just a little bit more of an uninformed viewership. And, I can see how if you don't know what's going on or don't really fully understand, how it could be taken as something very negatively or I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, irresponsible.
Yeah. Well, and I think every episode that we've had that we're not always going to win. Sometimes we're always trying new things, and sometimes they receive very well, and sometimes they're not. In every episode that we have, we really listen to audience feedback and adjust our course. So FPV Breakfast, what did that teach us? That we need to think about episode length, that we need to think about how much flying is actually focused on, simple things like that. Pinatas, again, do something that's more pushing the limit of the drone, structure it differently, film style needs to be changed. So things like that. When it came to the bridge episode, what were the lessons we learned from that? I think you're starting to touch on it, Tommy. I think these are the most important lessons.
Yeah, so again, because I think most of the people who are looking at that in a negative light don't fully understand what's going on, I think the lessons that we have come to learn out of that is that we should probably have a lot more exposure or explanation into the safety and setup side of things, because what people ultimately see is just the end product. They don't necessarily see all the checks that we go through on our mini quads. They don't necessarily see all of the planning that we do, because I don't just go willy-nilly and just go head north or anything like that. You know, I'm always conscious about what the power level is on my transmitter, what the null areas are. Are there any other RF potential blocking or interfering signals that could potentially be emitting? You know, and before my flight, there was a couple of flights from you guys as well. And that also vets out the situation, because you guys would be able to tell me and we would share with each other, yeah, you know what, flying over in that spot, not a good area. Control feels a little weird in this spot or anything like that. You know, and in that particular operation, everything was completely clear. But we don't share these things, mainly because I think we just initially, or haven't previously had to do anything like that, and we haven't been exactly super conscious about having to do something like that. So I think moving forward, that's kind of the answer of what we need to do if we are to do something similar.
Yeah, I mean, I think we put a tremendous amount of thought into the setup that we have, the condition of the setup that we have. I know I have some drones that's my basher drone, man. I only fly that when I know I'm going to be crashing. And this one is more pristine. I trust it a lot more. So the condition of the gear, exploring the RF situation, setting the video levels, communicating with each other, setting up spotters. Really, in this particular case, we were doing high altitude next to the bridge structure. We put a lot of thought into the wind, and I want to talk kind of specifically about that in a little bit. But all these things we put thought into, and then when the final episode came out, you know how much of that we featured? Zero, none. Mm-hmm. It was just this like happy-go-lucky, like oh, we're here now, we're flying. Oh man, that's crazy. And it was a really fun episode, but it feels like we were there for over an hour. It feels like we showed up, you know, did our little flight and took off, and we're just like, yeah, nailed it. It was very different in reality.
Yeah, you know, and I think a lot of it is just because most of the time I like to parallel when it's just strictly a flight video. It's like a music video. You know, making a music video is a ton of production work for what ends up being 3 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And we just have this assumption that nobody cares about what the setup and everything that comes up to.
Well, we had just grown,
working up to making it.
We've never been larger.
Got used to We just got used to nobody cares about that, and we're starting to learn that when it comes to these types of things, it's probably worth a couple of minutes to show the setup, because you know, at the end of the day, I can certainly see the argument that, you know, we make it look easy. And maybe too easy, to the point that somebody new to the hobby who doesn't quite have the experience, who doesn't quite know what to check for, could easily find themselves in trouble. And I definitely recognize that. And I do think that moving forward, I think it's worth showing people that it's not as simple as picking up your drone mini quad, plugging that battery in, and making a beeline for that bridge.
Yeah, I think shame on us for, prior to that video, not considering well enough the implications of less experienced people seeing that, you know, what it could mean.
Right. Now, gentlemen, I know I'm 5 minutes.
See the time.
I gotta go. Yeah, but I mean, is there anything else that I can answer?
You killed it. You killed it on that flight, Tommy. Thanks for stopping by, buddy.
Well, so really quick, I mean, I'm pretty sure the answer is obvious, but like, if you know, should we think about putting that video back up? Should we just leave it alone?
Well, what do you think? Where are we
at?
Matt, what do you think about all that?
Well, I mean, essentially, the app has been cleared by Air Canada, the Civil Aviation Enforcement. So, I mean, they're not going to be investigating you any further, that's for sure. Right. You know, it might be worthwhile as a teachable moment to come, you know, explain why it was safe. You know, there's a big misconception. I remember, you know, I started building drones probably in 2011, and every time that
oh no, not you, Matt. Tommy, you can go if you need to.
Oh,
okay.
Well,
Just really quick before I go, I'm glad that you brought that up, Matt, because that's actually the direction that I would want to bring the video back, is in a different light. So, we would explain what went on and then use that as a moment to show everybody why it was safe and what we did not show. I mean, unfortunately, we won't have B-roll of any of that, but we could at least talk about it. And then just use it to show people like, hey, be safe moving forward and things like that. And again, one last thing before I leave, Matt, thank you so much for everything that you've done to help us get to this point. I'm glad that the outcome is positive versus negative. And yeah, so all right, guys, I gotta take off. Maddie, Matt, Drew, peace out, guys.
See you, Tommy.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
Love you.
Love you too, bro.
So
Matt, sorry, Matt, you want to just continue on your train of thought there?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, back when I started building drones, every time there was a news article, news report on drones, they'd have a Predator drone on the news article. And for those of us who've been involved with the technology and know what it's about, it seems like everybody should be up to speed with this by now. But I would suggest that the opposite is true, that a lot of people are getting to the point that maybe you guys were 3 or 4 years ago with drones. They don't know that there's little tiny drones out there. I just picked up my 2 boys. I have 2 sons, some Gremlins, and
nice.
I was telling people about that, and they're thinking, well, you bought them these DJI Inspire 2s, and they're going to be, have these little kids out there flying it. I just don't think when they see that bridge video, they know that it's a fairly small aircraft, and that you guys are going through all these safety protocols to make sure it's safe. And interestingly enough, I mean, even I was thinking about this through U.S. law, and we do have a prohibition against flying over moving cars in the United States, but I didn't see any of that on that video. It's my opinion that flight would have been compliant with U.S. unmanned aircraft systems law, because you never flew over any cars.
Yeah,
Right.
I share that opinion. I wish Tommy would have been able to join us, because really talking about what's safe and legal and things like that, and trying to understand all these things, I'm of the opinion that our flights were all safe. They may or may not have been legal, depending on if it was or wasn't a commercial operation, depending on what country we were in and what their laws say about how close we can fly to structures, what their laws say about the weight of the aircraft, what their law says about proximity to vehicles, and we were not over vehicles. So it may or may not have been illegal, given what country we were in. I mean, maybe if that was in France, it could be a different story if it was in the U.S. or if it was in Canada. But what I do believe is it was safe, because the pilot was operating within his ability, and the way it was flying was that if at any time there was, this is like a big thing for me. If at any time there's a mechanical failure, where's the thing gonna fall? And that means that the momentum, that if at any time it just dead ducks, which it just turns into a projectile, motors all just stop, where's it gonna go? Is that momentum going to carry you to an unsafe place? And I believe every maneuver that was being executed, that we ever executed, whether it was used in the final cut or not, was such that if the drone ever dead ducked, it's going in the water, it's going in the grass, it's not going to hurt anyone or any vehicle. So there's no safety concerns. And I think that, again, circles back in a big way to how we need to provide context for these things, because knowing how to set up those lines and considering failure modes in advance, that's something that comes with experience. And I think a lot of untrained eyes could not tell the difference. They wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. And if we don't explain that, then shame on us, because someone could see what we did, go out and replicate it in their eyes, but they're taking very different lines. And if they have a mechanical failure, it's going right into traffic. So it could be very different. And to the viewer, they don't see the difference.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right, Drew.
I would say that all of us who are in, drone technology do have a responsibility to be good stewards to explain, what we're doing. I'll just give you an example. When I'm out flying, when I started, I remember we did the Cleveland National Air Show in 2014, and it was a big stir about that. And everyone that came to our tent would have their arms crossed and say, these dang drones, I'm gonna shoot them down, when we explained, that all the good that is in this technology and the fact that it's being used in STEM education and teaching kids about, leading edges on props and electronic speed controls and brushless motors. And there's so much knowledge in there and it's fun. And that in itself is a little bit of magic with drones. It can, especially for the next generation, they're so good with, video games, their spatial awareness. That comes right into FPV flying. It comes right into the skills that are important in commercial drone flight. Am I doing a facade inspection? Is my drone too close to that building? I mean, there's real skills, and it's a whole bunch of fun. It's literally magic. But at the same time, you guys, myself included, we have a responsibility to go out and be good stewards of the hobby, good stewards of the industry. And I'll just give you an example. I was flying at a park, had permission to fly there. I was getting some fall color, and I walked over and I saw some people across the way, and I said, "Look, I'm Matt. I'm doing this flight. I'm not spying on you guys. I'm not doing anything else." They came, they watched, they were enthralled. They were so into the technology, learning about it. They thought it was cool. Within a matter of time, another group of people come over, like other people had before, with their arms crossed, saying, "What's going on here? What are you doing with this drone? Are you filming me and my kids?" And the people that I had made the effort to talk to about what I was doing there, suddenly, now being indoctrinated, turn to these people and say, no, that's Matt. He's just taking pictures of the fall colors. Look on the screen. And then suddenly this group that all has their hands folded, now they're converted. Now they understand. So, with what you guys are doing, it's amazing. It can draw it in. But I think there's the rest of the story to tell here. And maybe it is a good time for you guys to reintroduce this video and talk about all the protocols that you go through. That you didn't just get the drone out of the box one day and start doing these type of flight maneuvers. How much practice is involved? Checking the frequencies and interference that Tommy was alluding to. All that stuff, maybe could be a teachable moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so we've been talking about legality and safety. I believe that our operation was safe. Whether or not it was illegal, that was determined by Transport Canada. They have not determined that it was illegal. So there's that. There's the third piece is, regardless of that it wasn't unsafe and it wasn't illegal, was the video still right? And I would say that now I believe the video was wrong, because we weren't the best stewards for the hobby. We were careless. It was just carelessness. And that's the story you share about how you interact with people at the park. That kind of thoughtfulness and taking the time to make sure that people seeing this stuff for the first time have a good experience. That's the kind of thought that we need to be executing on with everything that we do.
Let me ask you guys something. Do you guys find that when you're out in the public, like Drew, you were just up here in Vancouver, and remembering their reactions, do you find that the people in the States are different in their reactions when they first see it? Because I've never really had someone come up and tell me or ask me, am I spying on them? Right? They're always, most of the people in Vancouver are usually pretty hey, what's that? It does this. That's what it is. You're seeing this? Holy smokes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it kind of varies by region. There's so many different personalities in the United States depending on what state you're on. And I've flown in a lot of different states, but I'd agree for the most part, public reaction is pretty positive. I still hear the stories from what Matt is sharing, where people approach just with their arms crossed. I don't know. I haven't personally experienced that too much. I'm sure it's happened here and there. Honestly, if there's anyone that really gets mad at me, it's or has in the past, it's other RC pilots that aren't multi-rotor pilots. The fixed wing RC airplanes have expressed some of the most prejudice I've ever experienced in the FPV world. So it's a highly limited statement. Within the FPV world, that's where I've seen a lot of the prejudice coming from other areas of RC, because I do think that the drones, that the multi-rotors have generated a lot of popularity for radio control, more than has been done with RC airplanes or RC helicopters. So we've changed the landscape of all of RC, and certain people aren't necessarily happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that it's, drones have been so dominant that on their own they've sort of redefined the hobby, and a lot of the old salts, as I like to call them, that's been on the RC field, because of some of the negative publicity about drones and misunderstandings, kind of blame the FPV pilots, for example, for sort of ruining the hobby. That certainly is not true. I think they should be more welcoming. But I've experienced the same thing at my own RC club. But I will say about the negative feedback on drones that I've witnessed a huge transition from most people thinking drones are cool and interesting. And when people realize how much science is involved with it and how deep it really goes, and I'll make a bold statement that I think that, the technology that goes in drones, the first multi-rotor was really invented in the late 1920s, early 1930s. It was called the Bozizet Flying Octopus, right? It was a quad rotor in the 1920s and 30s.
Was this a manned aircraft in the 20s?
Manned aircraft in the 1920s.
Jeez.
When they tried to invent helicopters?
Right. Well, technically, it was the first helicopter. It predated the Sikorsky-style helicopters. But so this was abandoned because of pilot workload. Slow this rotor down, speed this rotor up, all that. Modern technology is what really allows drones to exist here and now, that be a viable means of flight. And I think that what's happening here, it's somewhat philosophical, but what I think is happening is that technology has sort of been locked in the box for a long time. We use Excel spreadsheets and databases inside this computer, right? A lot of digital efficiency in there. But now what you're seeing is that the technology is manifesting in the physical world. I think that, Drew, do you have a 3D printer behind you? Is that
oh yeah,
what I'm saying?
3D. If you're watching the video version of this podcast, I'm pointing at my 3D printer in the background. I use, every week at least.
Case in point, a 3D printer is digital efficiency now manifesting in the physical world. It makes things. All right.
Oh, yeah. It materialized. Like I've gone from my brain to I'm holding something in under 2 hours. That's what is going on. We're in the Matrix. We're in the Matrix.
Right. You make my point. Now you're using the digital efficiency of computers to make that happen. That's the bridge. Well, I'll take you one step further, and I'll say that drones are the go anywhere, do anything mobile data platform. And I think that we never know what's around the bend. But my opinion right now is that drones will be one of the most transformative technologies of our lifetimes because of that concept. Go anywhere, do anything, mobile data platform.
So that brings up
really
something. No, I think that really brings up something. There are so many advanced implications for multi-rotor technology. How are these new implications and new commercial ventures in particular, how is that going to affect what we are all into, which is recreational flight? And sure, Rotor Riot is a business, but it's a business around recreational flight. If recreational flight is threatened, my business is threatened, right? So we provide for recreational pilots. So how do we secure a future for recreational enjoyment of this technology and not just commercial ventures?
Well, I think that at least in the United States, and that there's been a history of that, right? That this type of flight aero modeling has always been for recreation. But I do see an interesting dynamic. Those that are, I think the FPV pilots are the most talented drone pilots that are out there. All these guys are flying big commercial rigs like the Matrice 210 and doing building inspections, there's not even any comparison to the level of skill of FPV pilots. There's so much more skill. So I think that there's an incredible dynamic here. Almost the closest thing I could think of is that, we had the military fighter pilots that maybe eventually become commercial, right? They're honing their skills in that regard. But with FPV racing, the ability of spatial awareness to go through a little hoop or be able to bank and turn around something, those skills are real skills that will be used in the commercial drone industry. I mean, there's definitely a breeding ground that is super fun and super magical. But to answer your question, Drew, I mean, from my perspective I think that because of our history of aero modeling and FPV racing being recreational, I think it's a strong argument could be made for it maintaining that character going forward.
I mean, I agree. I agree that there will always be recreational RC flight. It will find its way. We will find a way. As long as we don't all give up, the people that enjoy it, it will find a way. I think people are nervous because they are seeing movement. So in the past, the law in the United States that has explicitly protected FPV flight is Section 336. Literally said where FAA jurisdiction began and end with regards to FPV flight. And that was something that was very unique to the United States. No other country had that. We were really spoiled. And now that has been thrown out. And they're writing new clauses around not just FPV, all RC flight.
I feel like it's almost...
We can still totally legally fly, but people are freaked out.
I feel like it's almost swung because I felt like Canada was the one that had the really strict laws. Mm-hmm. And then it was like we changed our laws from really strict to like, it's not so strict anymore, but you still can't go like near wildfires and stuff like that. And there's still things you can't do, but like flying in public is pretty much fine now. And it seems like the states kind of swung the other way, where
not
it's starting
that much has actually changed. The perception is so much has changed.
Right, but there's also rumblings that it could change.
That's the truth. Is that now with the repeal of Section 336, the stage is set for what people would describe as the falling sky, but we just can't let it go that way. I mean, right? So Matt,
yeah, that's you being on obviously the lawyer side of things. What do you think can happen? Like if these guys make these rules and there's this big community of people that fly drones in the US, is there anything they can do to get these laws changed?
Well, they're obviously done it.
Or like some kind of addendum that comes into place where they lighten the rules and the laws a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was part of the Reauthorization Act. I mean, obviously this goes to the federal government. This goes to the highest level of government in Congress. I think that it's developing. I think that there's a proposed aeronautical knowledge test for recreational pilots now. I think there's a big push for accountability. I think people are concerned. I'll give you an example. There was a quote that a new technology is it's the biggest threat. This new technology is the biggest threat to privacy as we know. Okay, so and actually, you'd say that this statement was made about drones, but it was actually made in 1898 about the handheld camera. So new technology always scares people. I think that there's a little bit of a reset on recreational piloting in the United States. But I think and by the way, aero modeling has always been, the FAA has taken a laissez-faire, hands-off policy with regard to aero modeling because of its long history of safety. I think that as long as the multi-rotor community continues that long history of being safe and has a good track record, I think that we're gonna have a reset and go back to a hands-off policy with regard to recreational flight. But right now, the pendulum has just swung that way, and we're gonna have to deal with it. I'm interested in what's going to come out of the FPV competitions that are happening in the future. If the FAA intends on really cracking down on these and and trying to restrict that in some way. I think there's some real powerful arguments with precedent that they shouldn't do that. And I think it's short-sighted mainly because there's a huge educational opportunity here. Education, if you guys weren't aware, was grouped in with recreational flight. So teaching people how to do drones was seen as a hobbyist activity. But if the FAA restrict this vehicle of teaching our kids science and mathematics in this way, it's very short-sighted. This is too powerful and too exciting to restrict. Any FPV pilot that I know right now would be happy to sit down with a group of kids and show them how they put one of these together, how they tune it, and how they fly it. I've seen it happen before. You guys are so enthusiastic about what you do, and it's contagious. And that's the amazing thing, is that these kids learn about a lot of science in this whole endeavor, and they don't even feel it. It's like reading a book when you're on the treadmill, right? You're trying to keep your mind off the fact that you're exercising. All these kids want to do is make this thing fly, but man, they learn so much in the process of it. So I think it's too magical. I think that you guys need to continue to, sort of be like the Lorax and speak for the trees out there. You need to share your enthusiasm about what you do with everybody. I think we'll get over this hump with the regulations.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that any better. I want to take that whole monologue, put it on repeat, and blast it from the rooftops. I mean, sincerely, it's great. I think there's so many amazing things to this this hobby, and it goes through the whole spectrum of multidisciplinary interests and activities and challenges. I mean, there's mechanical skills involved in actually building. There's some programming involved in doing the configuration, like beta flight tuning. There's an actual practice physical skill. It's your thumbs, but still, I mean, it's hand-eye coordination. And then depending on where you take it, you get this video, and now you turn it to an artistic output. With
creativity too.
Of music and colors. It's everywhere. So there's so many things you can do with this one activity. That's why I'm addicted to it.
So Matt, tell me, as a lawyer, I've never met a lawyer that flies drones, but I'm sure there's lots of people in different career sets. But as a lawyer, what kind of quad do you fly?
So I have two DJI Mavics. I have a DJI Inspire 2. I have a Phantom 4 Pro. I have a whole bunch of home builds that I've made. Carbon fiber sheet plate. I was doing that a long time ago. I use Pixhawk autopilots. I'll be honest, I just recently got into FPV flying. I have a Inductrix and an Inductrix Plus that I fly with my kids, and we sort of just upgraded with that, with I think a Gremlin and a Turbo Gremlin. I know one of them is real small and one a little bit bigger, a little bit faster. But I really enjoy FPV flight. I'm amazed of how intuitive it is. My kids are 10 times better than I am, which is, case in point, that, kids are sort of like they come up, and maybe you guys did, just growing up with video games and strafing and all that type of thing. That's, and Drew, you're mentioning that, it's just thumbs on the sticks. But see, that's the magic in it, because, the kids are good at that. It's comfortable to them, and then comes learning all the science. But you asked me what kind of drones I fly, and I went way off topic again.
No, that's cool.
We do it here.
It's funny how the lawyer has like every single magical, crazy, expensive drone that there is out there, and that's because of the income from being a lawyer, I guess.
Well, I have a drone company too, so that's.
How long have you been flying? I think you may have said that. How long?
Oh, as a kid, I started playing with RC stuff. RC, I don't know how many RC planes I've crashed and little helicopters, but I really started to get into drones in about 2009 when DIY drones came out, and you had basically they're using Arduino to hook up to airplanes so they could fly themselves, but put in autopilots. So it was pretty expensive back then. I think that you couldn't really. I mean, it was in the $20,000 to $30,000 just to build a a drone with the electronics that you'd probably crash. So I worshipped the technology from afar for quite some time. And then late 2011, I started building my own quads, and I crashed a lot too, getting the technology right. And I saw it as an industry potential. So I thought, hey, if everyone's got to go through the blood, sweat, and tears that I had to go through to get their quad to fly, this industry's never going to grow. So actually, at that time, I started teaching at the community college. I had a build program fly class for drones in late 2011 and through 2012 at the Lorain County Community College in Northern Ohio here. But that's kind of how I really started diving into it. But if I had a nickel for every time I got the question, why is a lawyer flying drones? You know, I'd have a lot more drones. Let me tell you that. But I guess
so you can find the time with your work and with having a family to fly drones.
Well, actually, I mean, it's kind of cool because you know, drones were sort of I guess I'd call them a little bit of a jealous mistress, and I am busy, but the fact that I just you know, my kids are into it now. We started on the simulators and flying the simulators, and we started flying FPV, and now I have a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old boy. Now they get into flying the drones with me, so it's kind of a cool thing that I've been able to combine.
Share,
but
yeah, absolutely.
It being cross-generational is so cool. I mean, I love when we hold these quad camps events and I see parents there with their kids. That's awesome. You know,
I think that the hobby's always been like that, because I'm sure, Matt, I don't know if you said you flew airplanes when you were a younger kid,
right?
RC airplanes. Did your dad or brother or older brother or something like that get you into it, or?
Yeah, so my dad was definitely interested. He was a high school math teacher, so he was interested in that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I tell you, my dad wasn't really into flying the planes, but he was fascinated with the technology and learning about it with me. So we definitely had, you know, we had that experience, and you know, well, I mean, Chad was involved with flight tests for a while, right? I mean, they. You know, they definitely have that. I mean, if you know, Flight Test has that. I mean, that's kind of been their theme from the beginning is, you know, family time, learning about flight, all that stuff. That's something you guys are carrying forward, whether you know it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I picked up the hobby when I was 7 years old, when my dad got me an RC10, which was a dune buggy car. And since then, I've always been into like RC stuff. It doesn't matter if I drop it for 5 years and I come back and now I'm flying a Piper Cub, which I did, and then it turned in a Piper Cub turned into a Typhoon 2, 3Ding, and then it turned into a Zephyr 2, which was the big wing, and then to mini quads. It always will. The technologies always interest me, even if it's just like an RC car, you know, remote controlling a car, simulating driving a dune buggy, right? Hey, Drew, let me ask you something. Did you ever 3D print that plate that we were talking about for the grinding?
No, I still need to make that. I need to send you one of my frames, and I need to send you some plates.
We need to get on
all
that.
sorts of stuff. Yeah.
How was China?
China was pretty crazy.
Was it?
Yeah.
What did you do there again?
Well, so I went over there, and I every step of the way I learned it was a little bit different than what I was expecting. I thought I was at first going over there for a car commercial that they just wanted a drone pilot to do some chase footage. And I said, okay, whatever. And then I kind of learned before leaving, that this is actually a project that prominently features FPV, and they wanted kind of a known celebrity face. And I was actually going to be in it. And I was like, oh, shoot, I got to go put more purple in my hair and get a cut, which I did. And so then I get there, and it's actually, as it turns out, what we were filming was a bit of a short film that was sponsored by some Chinese car companies, including the Ford Mondeo, which is the Ford Fusion. So over in China, they have the Ford Mondeo, and it's the Fusion, but dressed up to be a little bit more of a luxury car. So it's like a little short film with some pretty heavy Ford product placement in a sense, and it's like this action sequence where me and this professional race car driver, they got a famous Chinese race car driver. He was really awesome to work with, and we did all these scenes. I'm climbing towers, and we're like talking to each. Actually, what's funny is about all these scenes, like we talk to each other. I don't speak Chinese, and all his lines were in Chinese, and mine were in English. Like we're doing the thing where it's like I pretend like I can understand Chinese, and there'll be subtitles and whatnot. But I don't. It was all faked. I'm like, turn left, and he's like, da 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 da. I'm like, yeah, no, the other left. Da, 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 da. I'm sorry, man, I got you.
Zuo, and yo. Remember I was teaching you, yo.
Zoe. Oh yeah, I should have at least tried.
And Yodran and Zuodran. Hey, it's like when I go to Jenny's family dinners. It's the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. They talk in Chinese or Mandarin, and then I'm like, oh yes, I heard one thing there. Said Maddie, and yes, I'm here. And then Jenny has to explain it to me.
I have a quick. If you guys don't hear it, you were in China. A funny China story is that I went there probably 2010, and the concept of like the fact that a lot of people there don't read Arabic was sort of lost on me. Just regular letters. So we were in Hong Kong. We went to the convention center, and every time I went to the convention center, if I didn't bring the little slip of paper that had the name of my hotel written in Mandarin on it, we had to walk back to our hotel because there's no way I could communicate to the cab driver where I wanted to go. I even had a picture of our hotel, but it was the name of it was is written in English, so he couldn't read it. He didn't know what hotel that was. So that you think I'd learn that lesson real quick, but I ended up walking miles and miles to Hong Kong because of that mistake. So hopefully you don't make that mistake if you go over there.
I've been really spoiled every time I've gone to China. I've always been brought out by some Chinese organizations. The first time by XFly, and the second time by TCK, Team Cockatoo. So what that means is I've got locals pretty much handling me the whole time, which I'm incredibly grateful for their hospitality because I don't have to do any of the communication. I'm just pretty much the smiling tourist along for the ride. Like, yeah, we're okay, getting in the car now. I have no idea what's going on. Food just, okay, I'm eating this. Ooh, I don't like that. Okay, I like this one. I'll eat this one, right? So I just it's all just go with the flow. I'm totally spoiled over there. I always have very gracious hosts. So thank you both XFly and Team Cockatoo for taking such good care of me on the 2 times I've been over to that country.
So we're getting up to the 1 hour mark. I'd like to take this time, Matt. So where can people find you if they need legal advice, and what kind of legal advice do you give?
Yeah, so drone law is a big part of my practice, and actually it's a very interesting area because it involves property rights and trespassing and privacy rights, and really you can commit crimes with drones. So it's pretty interesting. It's a pretty broad and developing area. So they can find me. I have a drone law section on my website. It's mishacklaw.com. It's MIS.
Link in the description.
Okay.
But spell it out in case someone's listening in the car. I'm sorry I interrupted. Spell it out for our car listeners.
Yeah, it's mishacklaw.com. They can find me on there. And I've had a lot of different interesting drone law cases. I've had criminal cases involving FPV. In fact, it's kind of interesting.
That's I think it's really cool that you get to do some drone law. And you were talking about how long you've been into RC, and I think you've done what is my piece of advice when people ask me how they could find a career in something related to drones. I always say look for intersections of your interests and talents and skills, and that you may or may not be able to find some sort of employment just piloting FPV quads. I mean, God, I'd love that, but that's not my situation. It was finding areas of my expertise in business and engineering that allows me to do what I do with my company, Rotor. And so for you, Matt, you're able to intersect your interests in RC aviation and intersect it with your interests and skills and education in law. And I think that is so unique and really cool. And it probably means that you're one of a very small pool of lawyers that can be the first that people go to for those types of cases. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting. And one thing I'll mention is that, once companies get interested in wanting to implement drone technology in their operations, they get all excited and then they go, oh, we better call legal, right? So, can we, what's our liability? What's all this aspect of it? So it's been pretty exciting being able to go in and know the technology and then also know the laws behind it. That's sort of been a real, it seems like a real specific niche for me. So I go into a lot of companies and help them either decide whether they're going to implement their own drone program or if they're going to outsource, and what's the technology, what's the laws they need to worry about, how do they get licensed, what's the potential liability, what do they do with the data files once they capture them, should they have a retention policy. All of these type of issues are things that I've been able to sort of be a trusted advisor to a lot of companies on, and different people. I'll tell you about one other case I had as a FPV. They were flying on this property and ended up getting somebody thought that the sound of the rotors was a crying baby, so that's why they called the police, and then ended up resulting in it resolved favorably, but it ended up in a criminal trespass charge on an abandoned piece of property. But you just never know what you're gonna run into. But that's drone and drone laws is something that's pretty interesting, and I've had a lot of interesting experiences by having those two, whatever niche sets of knowledge.
Right. Actually, that brings up something that. So people are very sensitive, as we've been discussing, or not people in general, but members of the FPV community are sensitive about the future of FPV regulations, as they should be. And when they see, certain things we do, some of them get nervous, maybe if we're potentially, allegedly trespassing, maybe even resulting in a security guard in Puerto Rico pulling a gun on us. These things are saying, oh, you're going to get the hobby regulated. And I've always been of the opinion, listen, that sort of stuff, those are civil claims. Trespassing or not, that's a civil offense. The FAA doesn't care if I'm hopping a fence. Okay, the FAA cares if I'm creating a safety concern in the airspace. So I think it's really different. I've been potentially trespassing since I was 13 and skateboarding in places I shouldn't be skateboarding. So that's just...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Has nothing really to do with drones in a sense. You know what I mean?
It's funny, in the States, it seems like... It seems like in the States, trespassing is like people are just getting lit up with trespassing all the time. I don't feel like we care as much about trespassing in Canada.
Really?
Like people like...
Well, you and I were flying that spot and the property owner came over and wanted to hire us, which I thought was hilarious.
Oh yeah. Whatever happened to that gig?
I should give you
whatever
his number.
happened to that gig?
I didn't call him because I was only there for a few days with you, but I should give you his number because we did take.
We totally forgot about that.
Yeah, so you can go get paid. So yeah, we were flying this place, and he comes up.
Yeah. People try to hire you here apparently if you're trespassing, but I mean, people like when we were downtown and we were flying. When we were in an area where there's rails and we were flying, the security guard might come out and be like, oh, yeah, you're trespassing. But if we stay there, it's not like we're getting arrested and then someone's coming to charge us with trespassing. It's like these people were like, they wouldn't leave and they were skateboarding or flying drones or whatever. Like even when I was rollerblading, we were little shits and we wouldn't leave and we never got arrested for trespassing. And I've heard a bunch of cases so far of people flying drones where they might have gotten arrested for trespassing.
Yeah.
May or may not have.
It depends. I mean, I think what I tell people when it comes to flying some of these abandoned structures in Detroit, there are places that we know they are patrolled by the police and they have a policy of taking legal action because of they want to set a precedent based on safety concerns or the property owner has expressed that it's a big deal or graffiti or whatever. So I just know, hey, wouldn't that spot be cool to fly? But I ain't never done it because I know that I'll get in trouble there. But this other spot I go to all the time, and the worst that's ever happened is a cop rolled by and came by on the loudspeaker, sure looks like you guys are trespassing. And he just watched us crawl back out from under the fence, pack up our stuff, and ride away. And he just waved as we left. Like, he just was like, you guys should leave. And we did. And no problem. Right? So that's the other thing, is if you do encounter, unless it's a place where you just know, because there are certain places in Detroit that if you go, it doesn't matter how nice you are. Like, you should just know from the underground talks that not go to that place, you're screwed. But for the most place, if you do end up interacting with security or police, just be super nice and understanding, and just leave. Don't be a little shit. I used to be a little shit on my skateboard too.
Yeah, I used to be a little shit too.
And do all sorts of stupid things. Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's.
I got one more question for Matt. One more question, because I know this is going to be burning for a lot of our community members, because a big part of FPV flying is posting to YouTube, and we talked a lot in the first half of this podcast about what defines a commercial operation, because that was what we were kind of charged with in the Canadian incident. I've seen this asked a lot of times. People are worried that if they go fly, post a video to YouTube, and it's monetized, could that be considered a commercial operation? So in this case, they're going to the field with the intent of flying, with the intent of capturing footage of their freestyle, and posting it to YouTube and running ads on it. And the ad revenue isn't significant. For a long time, I made like 20 cents a video. None of us make a lot of money on YouTube.
We're not doing it for the money.
YouTube doesn't pay that much, but I do get money from YouTube. Again, it's not much, but I do get money. And it was for that concern that almost 2 years ago at this point, I'm about due for a re-up, that I was like, dude, you know what? I'm just going to get my Part 107 just because, like, why not? Why not just take the test and cover my ass, right? So do you think people need to have a Part 107 just to be a YouTube FPVer?
Well, so the couple questions there, whether that activity would be under the existing regulations, would that be commercial activity? In the United States, it's actually what you have to establish is that you are doing it for recreational use. So, for example, public use is not commercial activity, but it's not recreational use, right? So it's not exactly that they're trying to prove that it's commercial. It's that you're saying, I'm just doing this for recreational purposes. So if they have some revenue coming in, if they fly with the intent of using it to get some revenue, could that fall outside of the recreational realm? I think it could, but I think that aero modeling has always sort of had that character to it, right? I mean, we have magazines that come out. There's advertising of aero modeling events, so you have that history behind it. But the laws are one thing, enforcement is another. It used to be that, maybe if you were out there with a hobbyist license posting drone videos, you get a cease and desist from the FAA. I think that it's highly unlikely that because you're getting a little ad revenue from your FPV flight, that the FAA is going to reach out to you and give you a cease and desist. So could it pass the line and be considered non-recreational? Yes. Is anything going to happen, and should you be afraid of it? Probably not.
The experience that I've had lines up exactly with what you're saying, and that would be my opinion too. That let's go the other way. Let's say you're doing something very unsafe, flying over people not covered by structures, flying in a very reckless manner. They will throw the book at you, and among the endangerment charges, they would totally levy that you were doing a commercial operation just to try and get you with everything they could. But if you're flying safely in a park, no one's gonna care, And I can say that members of and I can't make any guarantees. Experience may vary, but I can say that members of Rotor Riot have had interactions directly with the FAA as a result. The whole bridge incident actually garnered us a lot of connections with the FAA, so kind of interesting how that worked out. But in meetings with them, we've showed them content. We've showed them content that we filmed to kind of get their reaction. And, there was one piece of content where we were in a yard. It was private property that we had permission to be on. It was very remote, nowhere where unrelated bystanders would be appearing. And some aspects of the flight could be considered to be in violation of the FAA recommendations. And they were just like, dude, you're not hurting anyone. We don't care. In fact, you guys in that particular episode, we did show the safety precautions we took. If anything, we'd use this as a good example because you showed how you were considering, and you gave context as to how remote the location was. So I don't care that you technically did this one little thing that may have been against our recommendation regulations, but that's not a guarantee. I'm just sharing my experience and that it lines up with what Matt's saying.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The whole purpose of the FAA is safety of the national airspace. So that would be the primary factor. And, whether the FAA acts out, files cease and desist or enforces reckless activity with drones, FPV flying, is really a side issue to us as a community. If you guys want to protect your hobby, if we want to protect this industry, we should really speak up against bad actors. And when there's a question of whether this was safe or not, those conducting the flight, I think, have an obligation to step forward and make a statement about why it's safe and educate people about why it's safe. And maybe that brings us full circle back to the bridge dive shot. Is that maybe I can look forward to maybe this footage being out there again and explaining sort of the rest of the story. You guys probably never heard of Paul Harvey, right? There's a guy named Paul Harvey. He'd do this intro. He's a radio personality. And at the end of it, really interesting guy. He always say, this is the rest of the story. I think you guys need to do on the bridge dive, the Paul Harvey, the rest of the story, and show what really goes into making a flight like that.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. I mean,
Drew, you really need to brainstorm here and see how you guys can make that into an episode for sure.
Yeah, because if we just re-released it, we would be committing the exact same thing that I was saying before, which is regardless of it being illegal or unsafe, which again determined not to be either of those things, I still think there were things that weren't right about it. And so we have no intent of just re-releasing the same video without context, but I'd love to use it to create something educational. And this garnered us a lot of publicity, and there was a lot of people that they probably still think that this was all some sort of publicity stunt. People like to have their conspiracy theories. They say, oh, no such thing as bad publicity. That's bullshit. There's totally bad publicity. Our sales went down as a result. The personality of the Facebook community that we manage went a little bit negative. There was all sorts of negative repercussions. Totally not our intent. It was bad. And it still haunts us in a sense because we'll see things posted to our community page that we believe are unsafe. And then we speak out about it, and they say, you guys are a bunch of fucking hypocrites. You dive a bridge. What's the difference what I'm doing? I'm like, I literally see a crowd of people that you're diving a building over. Shame on me for just assuming that people are capable enough to make the distinguishment for themselves. We have to help them make that distinguishment. I mean, that's just the truth. They're getting mad at us because they can't innately make that distinguishment in their minds. And that's the big takeaway is we've got to do a better job. And the bridge dive over a year later still haunts us as an example that people say, hey, you guys set the example. I'm going to go fly over people. Oh, my God. Yeah. Trolls.
Drew's trolls.
Yeah,
so let me ask you one more thing, Drew. You know how you said like, oh yes, Matt's a lawyer. He gets to do what he loves. Like, I guess you were able to really do what you loved with the personality on YouTube, by which your true love is probably dyeing your hair. Is that right? Or
that's great. No, I'm thankful for a job in which I get to be myself, and that
you can write your hair dye receipts too.
Oh my God, I haven't actually done that. I should.
Absolutely, you should.
I should write off my hair dye on the 1099 for my YouTube revenue. Oh my gosh, great idea. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's wrap this up. Thank you so much, Matt, for taking the time out of your busy life to come and hang out with us and explain to our listeners and viewers drone law and your opinions on drone law and your opinions on the hobby. I think it's great to see anyone in any kind of industry can pick up this hobby and enjoy it, especially if it's a family affair, which I think it is with Matt here. And thank you, Drew, as well.
I just want to say thanks for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you guys about this stuff.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, well, Thanks everyone for joining us this time, and we will see you next time. As always, we appreciate your support.